Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead. There are over 11,000 nonprofit organizations in San Diego. These are places where we work, where we volunteer, where we play, where we give, and where we go when we need assistance. Our San Diego nonprofit organizations play a pivotal role in protecting and enhancing the well-being and prosperity of our region. Our nonprofit organizations are the fabric of our community and are needed now more than ever during these unprecedented times. The recent challenges we face may seem insurmountable. The uncertainty is complex and relentless, but we know that we can get through this as we have in the past. We persevere, we partner, we advocate, we serve, and we do whatever it takes to provide for our staff, our families, and our communities. The power of coming together for each other and with each other is within our grasp. Welcome to the City of San Diego Nonprofit Academy. Established in 2015, the Nonprofit Academy is a partnership between the City of San Diego and the University of San Diego's Nonprofit Institute. This award-winning program is designed to build a stronger, more viable San Diego nonprofit sector through capacity building, leadership development, organizational training, and support. We are excited to bring you a carefully curated agenda focused on leadership resiliency, equity, financial viability, and mission attainment in these uncertain times.
Thank you very much. We are extremely proud and honored to be with all of you today for Nonprofit Academy. I am Laura Deitrick, and on behalf of the Nonprofit Institute at the University of San Diego, we are grateful that you are joining us for what looks to be an incredible day of learning. At the Nonprofit Institute, we use a variety of programs and platforms to develop leaders, strengthen organizations, and conduct research and evaluation to advance the social sector in our region. We are not on the front lines, but all of our work is oriented around championing those of you who are, all of you. The Nonprofit Academy is made possible through an innovative and committed partnership between the Institute and the City of San Diego. We are grateful to the Mayor and the City Council, Christina and the Economic Development Team, and the Commission for Arts and Culture for their ideas, financial support, and deep commitment to local nonprofits. Before I begin the formal program, I would like to acknowledge and reflect on the painful issues we are facing as humans. Racism and injustice violate our most essential values as a human family. They violate the dignity and sanctity of every life of every person in our community. At the Nonprofit Institute, we are committed to supporting leaders and organizations who are change makers for social good, with aspirations for a better world. If we are to heal, we must come together as a community where everyone experiences love and belonging. Now is the time to not only imagine what a better world looks like, but to act with courage, compassion, and generosity to build it. If not now, when? If not us, who? Thank you for your consideration of that. So today we're at Nonprofit Academy. And before we begin, I thought I'd give you a little history on how this program came to be. What's its intended purpose? The Nonprofit Academy is a partnership with the City of San Diego designed to diversify the number and the types of nonprofits that do business with the city. The aim of the Academy is to increase the quantity of nonprofits that apply to do business with the city so that the pool of candidates is more commensurate with the diversity of San Diego marketplace and with the variety of needs across a wide demographic population. Initially, we put this program together to help improve the average score or rank of each pool of nonprofits that apply to do business with the city. And I'm happy to say that over the years, we have seen a great improvement in scores and ranks and more funding to different kinds of organizations with broader reach. Ultimately, the program is put together to promote the values of integrity, service, people, and excellence articulated in the city's strategic plan. But being good nonprofit people, when we came together with the city to put this program together, we jointly identified a set of core principles that guide our work at Nonprofit Academy. First and foremost, we do not believe that nonprofits are broken. They do not need to be fixed. They need to be nurtured, strengthened, and celebrated. We are committed to providing the highest level experience for as many participants as possible. We wish to magnify the impact that we have with multiple opportunities for added value. And indeed, this is actually an award-winning program. It's won international and national awards for its impact. Past participants have reported very positive outcomes, including stronger networks of support, better understanding of how to work with government, stronger board governance, and ultimately increased funding from a variety of sources as a result of participating. And ultimately, we're committed to continuous learning. So at every engagement, we at the Nonprofit Institute and our partners at the city learn more about what nonprofits need and what approaches are most effective for getting them there. I want to just tell all of you that in case you came today because you thought we were going to teach fundraising, this is not a fundraising class. Ideally, we believe there's actually a secret sauce for fundraising, and that secret sauce includes effective board governance, accurate financials, being able to address and identify quantifiable community need and really to be able to talk about need effectively, strong program design, and measurable outcomes. So we believe if you have all of those ingredients, you have the secret sauce, and fundraising then no longer becomes a presenting issue. So before I move on, let me talk a few minutes about the rules of Nonprofit Academy and expectations for participants. They're summed up pretty simply. Vegas rules apply at Nonprofit Academy. That means that this is a learning environment where everyone should be able to speak freely and not be worried about being penalized or having to hold back on their thoughts or their questions. So what happens at Nonprofit Academy stays at Nonprofit Academy, and let's just provide the greatest learning platform for all of our peers during the day today. And ultimately, I have to be the bearer of bad news. Participation in the San Diego Nonprofit Academy does not guarantee funding from the city. It should certainly help you and certainly improve your odds, keeping with the Vegas metaphor there. But you cannot expect guaranteed funding just because you've participated. So before we begin our day and I set you off, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the research that we've been doing and the context in which we know nonprofits are operating, a context that I call unprecedented disruption. We've done 2 surveys of nonprofits in San Diego since the onset of the worldwide pandemic from COVID-19. And in fact, we were one of the first research entities in the nation to release a study, and I want to thank any and all of you who have participated. So what do we know from hearing from over 500 plus unduplicated nonprofit leaders about what's going on the ground and how things are changing? Well, since the beginning of the pandemic, demand for services is increasing quickly. Calls to 211 have increased to almost 300% since the beginning of the pandemic. So 71% of nonprofits at the same time are experiencing service disruption. 3/4 of all nonprofits report loss in fee for service, and over 60% report decline in individual donations, which is important to note because 95% of all nonprofit funding comes from either fee for service revenue or individual donations. And finally, and what I consider actually to be one of the more troubling indicators of future health and vitality of the sector, 53% of nonprofits have reported furloughs, layoffs of employees, reduced hours, and or reduced pay, with more layoffs expected in the future. So we are certainly a sector in disruption. But nonprofits, resilient as they always are innovating. They are shifting their programs online, working remotely, partnering with funders to redirect grants and be creative to reach more people with fewer resources. And most importantly, they're collaborating in really new and interesting ways. As a result, public confidence in nonprofits remains high. In fact, in a poll we just conducted with the Chronicle of Philanthropy, a national public opinion poll, the public expressed the highest level of confidence in nonprofits to respond to COVID-19, much greater than that of government or corporate sectors. And before I send you off, I'd like to talk just for 1 second about key trends to watch. Unfortunately, we will likely continue to see declines in future funding from all sources, coupled with increasing demand for services during any sort of recovery or try to get people back to work. And at the same time, fewer nonprofit employees will be on hand to respond. We will be hearing calls for new operating and funding models, everything from deeper collaboration all the way up to a call for mergers. So what will the sector look like in the future? How can we grow stronger and more connected in our work? These are the ideas I hope you keep in your mind as we move through the day. While the future certainly does look challenging, I am confident because I know so many of you and have heard from so many of you that you are up to the task. And I know San Diego's future is in good hands. Now, I am happy to turn this over to Lynn Corbett. Lynn is the Director of Governance and Community Programs at the Nonprofit Institute and my closest partner on this project and many others. And for that, I am very eternally grateful. Like many of you, at the onset of what was to become a worldwide pandemic, we were forced to rethink this day, a day which is typically full of networking, handshaking, and generally being together. Well, obviously, we can't do any of that right now. When asked if we should postpone Nonprofit Academy, Lynn came out swinging, and I think that is really the best way to describe it, with an emphatic, no way, we are not canceling anything. So he has put together, along with our colleague Taylor Funderburk, just an amazing day for all of you. Please join me with your virtual applause in welcoming Lynn Corbett.
Good morning, everyone. We're so excited to have you here. As Laura mentioned, my name is Lynn Corbett. I'm the Director of Community Programs and Governance. I'm so excited to have you all here today. Very passionate about this work, as you all know. I'd like to officially welcome you all. First and foremost, for those of you who had to get up early because you're usually now used to getting up at 10 a.m., we thank you for coming and getting here a little bit early. For those of you who need to take a nap at noon, please do so. Feel free to keep your normal schedule. And for some reason this morning when I got up, I realized that somebody shrunk all of my suits. Like I can't button them, I can't move back, I have no idea what's going on. So I believe that someone's either snuck in and shrunk all my suits, or it's the pancakes I've been eating every day. One way or the other, this is making it very difficult for me to maneuver, but I do appreciate the time that you have here today. And lastly, for those of you who will not see this for a while, you don't have time, but you're watching it at a later date, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. All right, well, thank you so much for being here. We're excited about a full day of exciting guests. We've organized this to be a powerful day of leadership and a powerful day of working in these uncertain times, so we just thank you for the opportunity. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to a woman who I feel is extremely powerful in our community. I was driving about a month ago. I was listening to KPBS here in San Diego, California, and as soon as I got in my car, I heard someone speaking. I'm like, yes, she's saying exactly that. Yes, she's so powerful. And then when they announced that it was our lieutenant governor, I said, oh, I'd love to see if I can get her on. And lo and behold, her staff and her team were able to make this happen. So beforehand, I'd love to thank Dana and the rest of the team for allowing this opportunity to happen. I'm going to introduce you to our 50th lieutenant governor for the state of California, the first woman to hold that position. She was also President Barack Obama's ambassador to the Republic of Hungary. I'd like to ask you to join me in welcoming Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis.
Thank you so much, Lynn. It is great to be with you. I have to tell you, somebody shrunk my suits too. I don't know what's happened, but it's great to be with all of you. And really, congratulations to you and to Laura for continuing to move forward with this training program. It is very important. It's particularly important for the nonprofit sector right now, and I'm going to talk about a couple of the reasons why. But the theme of this segment is finding leadership during uncertain times. And you, Lynn and Laura, really stepping up to move forward to keep this training going and to give much needed leadership advice and organizational advice to the nonprofit sector is critical. Let me just also say that for everyone who is participating virtually, this alone is an incredibly important part of the future, not just of the nonprofit industry, but of distance learning and higher education and even elementary education, of the way that companies, for-profit, nonprofit, government, these platforms have emerged as able to give additional capability when people cannot be physically together. And I think we're going to see a lot more of the virtual work that is going to be going on, even when we're able to be back together normally again. So I thought I would just talk a little bit about how California has responded to the COVID-19 crisis and how that is going to and is already impacting the nonprofit world. California was the first state in the country to issue the stay-at-home order. This is something that I think every Californian should be proud of, because back in March and April and May, when we were out there mobilizing to make sure that our hospitals had capacity for a potential surge, back when we were scrambling to get PPE and masks and gloves and ventilators, we also were calling on the people of California to take personal responsibility to slow community spread. We didn't just flatten the curve in California, we crushed the curve in California. And there is no question that we saved tens of thousands of lives in the process. And again, it's something that we as Californians did together, and we did it largely because we believe in science, and we believe in the capacity of government to be able to filter the science, issue the stay-at-home order, and that it was the right thing to do. And again, when we look at the data of how many lives fatalities that we had here compared to other places that didn't issue those stay-at-home orders until late, it's really borne out by the facts. So now we are in the next phase. The governor has outlined 4 phases of the response to COVID. The first was the initial stay-at-home order. The 4th phase is when we all get to go back to normal, when we have a vaccine or some other capability to ensure that people are safe to return to normal. And then phase 2 and phase 3 are what we're in now, in the middle of this. And it's been likened to a dimmer switch, not a flip of a switch. And so the state is working very closely with all institutions and industries to come up with the protocols to safely return to work and school and all of the activities that make up our society and our economy. Meanwhile, even with the aggressive attempt to reopen safely, we are now looking at a significant budget shortfall in the state of California, coupled with unprecedented unemployment. So the numbers are now over 5 million Californians who have filed for unemployment in our state since the COVID-19 crisis hit. And largely, they are being supplemented, those unemployment checks are being supplemented by funds that came through the CARES Act from the federal government, which is helping families right now significantly. But this budget shortfall is looming and it's significant, and we are hoping for more federal funds, but it is very unclear whether they will arrive. So $54 billion is the budget hole the governor is working to fill along with members of the legislature. We have reserves because we're coming into this crisis after, again, an unprecedented period of growth in our state that has helped us to be able to close the gap. But again, we're looking at about a $14 billion budget shortfall in this year and next year. And in order to fill that gap, we are asking for federal funds in the form of the HEROES Act to be able to help us do that. If those funds don't come through, we will be looking at some pretty significant cuts to safety net, to schools, to healthcare, which is, of course, where the nonprofit sector comes in. Because as we know, nonprofits tend to step up, organize philanthropy, organize volunteerism, shine a light where the need is, and be able to find that gap where what the need is that people have and what the safety net that's being provided by the government is. That's your space. And so the figures that Laura and Lynn just went through facing the nonprofit industry are going, or nonprofit sector, are going to come home to roost when we see many people who are going to be struggling once the CARES money runs out, and if we don't get additional federal funds. So one of the other things that we've been doing here in California in order to try to meet this moment, as the governor often says, is he has appointed something called the Economic Recovery Task Force. It's a pretty extraordinary collection of volunteers, including people like Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, the COO of Google, CEO of Lockheed Martin, CEO of Chipotle, labor leaders, leaders from organizations, chambers of commerce, who have come together and said, we will clear our calendar in order to be able to be supportive and helpful of the state's efforts to deal with both the immediate economic crisis and to look at how we can work together to rebuild the California economy, which was going into this crisis the 5th largest economy in the world. So that has already resulted in some very positive outcomes just in working through the protocols for reopening, there has been a rapid response of leaders of this team to help support the state in coming up with those protocols and getting them out. If you think about restaurants, it takes decades to develop OSHA protocols for operating a restaurant. And now suddenly overnight, we have to have massive changes to those protocols. How do you get it done quickly? Well, again, having that rapid response of the Restaurant Association and as I mentioned, Chipotle, others, to help us do that has been critical. So I think I'm going to end it there, Lynn, unless there's anything else in particular you'd like me to talk about. And really just encourage all of you. Most people who I have worked with in my life in the nonprofit world come at their work from a place of civic mindedness, a place of generosity, a place of deep concern and commitment to their communities. And so generally speaking, they're some of the greatest people I know. So thank you for your ongoing commitment to your mission. I know, and you know, that this period of time is going to be challenging for everyone, but everything that has made the California economy strong over these last 2 decades, everything that has helped us emerge as the 5th largest economy in the world, those things are still there. We are still blessed with a spirit of innovation. We are still blessed with an incredible system of higher education, which attracts businesses because of our trained workforce. We are still blessed with a location on the Pacific Rim and the biggest ports in the country. And we are still blessed with a can-do attitude that allows people to develop all of these industries, whether it's manufacturing or agricultural, import, export, and industries beyond what we can even imagine today in technology and innovation. So that's it. Thank you for having me, Lynn. Good luck, everyone, and thank you for participating in this program.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Just some to allow us to understand context. Sometimes we work within this little bubble. We're not able to see the bigger, broader picture, so we thank you for exploring it with us. You know, as we talk about leadership, we believe that this is a time for the call to leadership. You know, this is the time when people will say, what type of leader are you? And do your actions match up with the type of leader that you are? Many people read a lot of books, Good to Great, Jim Collins, The Heart of Change by John Kotter, trying to figure out what are some best strategies or leadership principles that we can use. Today I'm going to introduce 3 principles of adaptive leadership to you so that you're able to see, well, how can a leadership principle allow me to understand context, be able to also move my organization forward. And a couple of things that I'm going to introduce you to, I'm hoping that it'll help that a little bit. Many of you may know me from my role as also the president of the Pivotal Group Consultants, but also as a professor. And if you've heard me say this, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, which is hope is not a strategy, right? I teach strategic planning. I breathe nonprofit strategy. I believe there's 3 precious things in life. That's little babies, kittens, and strategy, right? Not in that order. But what I believe is that we have to invest and know a strategy. This time is like no other. People who are saying, I can't wait to get back to normal, that is not the right approach. Periods of time like this, people realize it does not go back to normal, right? We have to figure out how do we operate in this new environment, and adaptive leadership will help us understand that. So my 3 principles, the first one is mindset. By the way, this work is from Ron Heifetz. He's an incredible work, a book, Leadership on the Line. I found it to be very instrumental in my work. So the first one, mindset. There are people who say, okay, it'll get back to normal, things will be okay. I don't really want to discuss it. That's where some of the challenges come in for some. I believe that we shouldn't be thinking about how do we get through it, but we should be thinking about how do we come out of this stronger. My mindset is totally different. One, how do I get through it? Let me patchwork, let me figure out, let me jimmy rig stuff, but also how do I get stronger as a result? So if I can focus on what our organization is going to be on the backside of this and how we're going to be bigger and stronger, it opens up my mind and I think very, very differently. The second point here is soliciting solutions. Okay, if you're an executive director, if you're a board of directors, and you're sitting at home now, or sitting when you're in your board meetings, and you're thinking that you have everything in that room alone to make the decisions, that's where in a time like this we're wrong. We have to solicit solutions from everyone at all levels of our organization, regardless of the role, right? Regardless of hierarchy, figuring out what are all of my data points that I'm going to need in order to address this complex problem with a complex solution. So a couple of things that I think that we should always keep in mind. The one thing is figuring out where people are, who else do I need to talk to? Some would say that you are doing several different type of experiments at the same time to try and figure out what's the best way to do it. The other thing is some people are taking some data points right now. What are your specific data points that I'm going to use right now in order to move forward into the future? And then what does that look like? How will we know when we reach there? Data is extremely important. Research is extremely important. Understanding that it goes beyond just exactly who's in the room, and it goes beyond just quick solutions. The way the adaptive leadership model talks about it, they talk about it being technical solutions and adaptive solutions. So this technical solution is a solution where someone says, okay, this is not working, let's just do this. All right, it's a quick fix, something that's technical that you can say, okay, one thing is not working, we can just do this, and there's really not a lot of thought put into it. The adaptive solution, problem is seen very differently. It gets down to the beliefs, the systems. How do we change that? We believe that this is a period of time of changing the systematic programs, problems, strategies that have plagued communities for numbers of years, and figuring out how do we have a restart, refresh. Okay, looking at it from an adaptive model approach, figuring out what needs to be changed. All right, that's point number 2. The final point here is point number 3, which is really looking at it in a way of naming the elephant in the room. I call it that because there are some things that who we are, that are about us, that we need to understand before we talk about strategy, before we're talking about moving forward, right? So one way is where are we on our organizational life cycle? An organizational life cycle looks like this, and there's different stages on there. Am I at the infancy stage, right? I'm at the mature stage. We have to figure out what stage is our organization at, all right? And that doesn't matter about how long you've been in existence. It's about where my organization is. What got you to one point will not get you to the next point, right? The old adage, what got me here won't get me there. What are the systems? What are the people that I need in place in order to do that? And there's some people out there doing some incredible work now. I've heard some people say, you know what? We've been working so fully without an organization, without a building, maybe we don't need to worry about a building, right? Maybe we're giving our building up first before we give up our staff. Right? There are some people who were able to put systems in place. You'll hear some exciting things today of some speakers that we have here, particularly our lunchtime plenary, where people were saying, you know, we need to start thinking about preparing for what's to come, not knowing. And people put some money aside, they put some reserves aside, and I know one organization that started last year, they have $75,000 in reserves saved, and they didn't use it yet. All right? Looking at it from a systems perspective, what do we need to do to prepare our organization? I often tell people that we don't know what's coming around the corner, but there are a bunch of people who depend on us to know. So if we're going to do that, we have to look at what are the systems, what are the cues, what's out there that can give us that information. And again, the last point with naming the elephant in the room is also looking at where are our strengths, right? We live in a society where if somebody likes something, they tell one person. If they don't like it, they tell 10 people. And with the age of the internet and Yelp, they'll tell thousands. So what are our strengths of the organization? What is it that we like? What is it that who we are? What makes us stand out from the rest, right? What is our competitive advantage? Often at times competition doesn't mean that we have to figure out how to get rid of this person or get rid of the other people, but it's asking ourselves, what is our competitive advantage? What makes us unique? And once you identify that, Any strategy you should fall within your competitive advantage, should fall within your strengths, all right? Figuring out ways to identify your strengths from your organization perspective. Again, you can do it from a SWOT analysis, you can do it from a pest analysis, you can do strength finders assessment. There's a number of ways that you can find it for yourself as an individual leader, but also that you can find it as yourself as an organization, right? So looking at it, what is our organizational strengths, and then moving that forward also. And then also, the last one is you will have to take risk, right? Being complacent, hoping that things go away. And it's kind of hard because almost I'm saying two different things. One, be prepared, be ready. The other one, take risk. Okay, you can look at it two different things, and maybe you can identify how do we understand this, or you can look at it as the type of risks that we take are going to fall in line with who we are, right? If I'm going to take this risk, if I'm going to put my organization out there, if I am going to move forward, because I have people that depend on me, I have staff that depend on me, I have people in my community that depend on me, how am I going to do that in line with our competitive advantage and in line with our strengths? When we think about leadership, times like this test who we are. You've never heard of anybody saying, I was sitting at home with my feet up, and lo and behold, I was called to lead. It doesn't happen, right? What happens is you're tested, your organization is tested, the community is tested, and then you step up and rise to the occasion, right? These things don't hurt us, they make us stronger, right? If we take that mindset, how do we get stronger on the back end of this? We can move mountains, right? We can move communities forward. We can break down barriers. Somebody asked me, how do I get over this barrier? I say, don't get over it, kick through it, right? We're strong. The nonprofit community, people call it the third sector. I tell you, prove to me that it's not the first sector, right? My measurements are different, right? It's not a financial measurement, but it's a powerful measurement. And I think we just need to look at that. So, I thank you for letting me talk about these three principles. I hope it establishes and puts a context into the day of the people that you hear, the people that you are about to to listen to. I'm hoping that you share in the comments how this is going to be helpful for you throughout. And then I'm also going to share some best practices of what can you do to get the best out of this conference. But before we go there, I'd like for you to hear from one other person. Her name is Christina Bibler. She's the director of the Department of Economic Development for the City of San Diego.
Good morning, and welcome to our 8th City of San Diego Nonprofit Academy. I'm Christina Bibler, Director of Economic Development, and I'm so happy to join you virtually today. I understand there are nearly 400 participants, and I just want to open with, not only is this a terrific turnout, but congratulations on your step to attend the Nonprofit Academy. It's an important step on your growth professionally, but also to your nonprofit and adding additional capacity and leadership abilities. Over the last 4 years, we've partnered with the Nonprofit Institute to develop this award-winning high-impact program. Throughout the project, I'm proud to say that we've focused on smaller neighborhood-based organizations, especially delivering services in some of our most vulnerable communities. We know that effective nonprofits are an integral part of an inclusive economy, which is why we are proud to make this investment to build nonprofit capacity and connect nonprofits to a broader array of services. It is more important than ever, especially because we are in uncertain times, to deliver services and resilience. The city has many resources, but collectively, we are better together. So we want to support nonprofits. We want to support your growth and your leadership in your communities, serving your constituents. Today, it's more imperative than ever. Whether you serve homeless population, women and children, refugees, workforce development, or any other multitude of causes that you are all supporting, I just want to make sure that we uplift your mission, that we continue to further the growth and trajectory that you're on by giving you tools to be successful. The work you're doing is really important, and we want to support you in your journey. So I'd like to also thank you for the opportunity to have my team support this conversation. We know that we are all resource constrained, as I'm sure you know, including nonprofits. And this is the time when our communities need us the most. So working together, I'm confident we will innovate new ways to meet the needs of our community. I'd like to acknowledge all of our speakers for putting together high quality sessions and for ensuring that you get the education and framework and network, even virtually, in this important time. I'd also like to say a special hello and thanks to my team at the city for all the hard work that they've been doing with our nonprofit leaders, specifically the Nonprofit Institute and our partners at USD. And I wish you all a fantastic day of learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Really appreciate that, and I really appreciate your being so thankful for us, the University of San Diego, but also for the community and the people that do this work. So I thank you for the opportunity as well. So a couple of people often ask us, how do we get the best out of this conference? So we have some principles that we think are very, very important to get the best out of the conference. There are people who, when we have this live, we usually have it on the University of San Diego. Of course, it's free to the community for those that are intending to doing work within the city of San Diego. And people often say, you know, I flew this far to attend this conference, and the conference that you all are putting on are so much more, it's so much more helpful for us. And I don't say that to boast about our program. I think we do put on a good program, but I do say that in efforts of saying that we establish this in a way that we know how people can be effective in this environment. Right? So what we do is we'll spend some time talking about how can you act in a certain way that not only benefits your organization and benefits others. What's the mindset do we need to have coming into this? And there's a couple of things that we'll share. So the first point here that I'd like to share with you is the point of being alert. Right? So I have these nice little animals courtesy of the San Diego Zoo that are going to help me explain this. So being alert. Being aware, one, of where your organization is, right? Two, of where the environment is. Three, how do I analyze that environment so that I'm clear on that, right? I often tell people that you say, oh, one person said this. Well, it's just one person's opinion. How can we make sure that we have good data so that we can make good decisions? So there's one way that you can do that is being alert. So if I'm attending this event, I'm being alert of where we are, what's going on in our environment, looking at our schedule and saying, what do I need to attend? Looking to see who else may be in the room, who else may be asking these questions, how might that be able to impact our organization, right? When I look at it, I want your organization and individuals from your organization to be able to say and what they feel, say what this means to them. So we call it a culture of inquiry, being able and comfortable enough to ask the critical questions and not to fear that people are not going to respond in a certain way or that there will be retribution for the questions that you ask. I believe it was Thoreau who says, a man or a woman should be known by the questions that they ask and not by their answers. So allowing for these powerful questions to be asked without fearing how I will be perceived. So very, very important. Be alert to your environment. Be alert to where you are. Be alert to what's going on and how can I embrace today, all right? So if you're sitting there with your slippers, I appreciate that because you're learning in your slippers, right? If you're sitting there in your pajamas and you're on a Zoom call, hopefully you have an appropriate shirt on, right? But looking at ways that we can identify how can we learn, how can we be here? So that means creating a distraction-free environment, right? We're doing a number of different things that allow this to be smooth flowing for you. But how do I allow myself to be there and to be present? So that's number one, is about being alert. Point number two is about speaking up, all right? So we do have the opportunities for us to speak up. So there's questions here, but the questions don't stop here, right? We're going to put in the chat panel the Lieutenant Governor's contact information. We're going to put the Nonprofit Institute's contact information in there as well. And then over at the city, Michelle Morano and Stacy, they do some great work over there. We're going to have their information there for you as well. Right, so speak up, ask the critical questions in the chat windows, reach out to other people, figure out what are some ways that we can make sure that we're speaking up about where the nonprofit community is, where the nonprofit community is going, but also speaking up today formulating the questions today that we can use not only in doing this work, but allowing other people to learn from it. A lot of times I start my programs off with asking these 3 reflection questions. I believe reflection is a leadership principle. What have I learned? What have I unlearned? What can or did I apply? Right? Tomorrow morning when you wake up, I'd like you to ask yourself those questions. Right? Doesn't mean it's about just what you attended today, what sessions you attended, but in general, what did I learn? Right? What new information did I take in? What did I unlearn? What did I have to stop thinking that was right, that may not be right? And how do I know that? What did I have to unlearn? And the last one is what can or did I apply? And when I hear somebody say something, it gives me an idea. When I read what somebody says in the chat window, it gives me an idea. What I'm saying is we are creating a positive space culture of inquiry for you so you can ask those questions, right? So Laura mentioned it earlier about the Vegas rules, right? So feel free to be able to ask those questions without fear of retribution. And we're reading them also, and if we can provide any assistance to you, we're gonna do that as well. Point number 3 is NPA at your own pace. So, thank you. With NPA at your own pace. So what we do is we said, okay, there will be some people who have meetings. There will be some people who aren't able to attend. We believe that it's important because a lot of people aren't able to come to the university. So this virtual event is going to allow us to look at this in a way that helps people move forward, but also at their own pace. So every session is going to be recorded. You'll be able to have the opportunity to look at every session. So this is why it's at your own pace. If you want to see 2 sessions, you have the opportunity to look to see one versus the other, and you'll find out some more information about that shortly. But also we have an app, right? We have an app that you'll be able to download on Socio, and you'll look at that app for us, and then you'll be able to see that some of the presentations we place in the app. So a lot of the slides, a lot of the information, all of that information is going to be in the app and available for you. So this is at your own pace where you feel like, how do I switch back and forth with rooms? I think that this platform is incredible. It allows us to bounce around rooms, but it also allows us to know that we can stay in a room, ask the questions that are going to be extremely helpful for us, and then watch the recording of another room. So, but feel free to jump around. That's why the platform is set up this way. Feel free to see as much as you want and pull from the information that's available to you. And then let's go to the next point, and that is point number 4. So this is about meeting. Often at times people are like, well, I wish it was a full conference because I get a chance to meet so many other people. Well, we have platforms and we have systems in place that allow you to meet other people. You are not in this alone. Figuring out ways, how can I work with other people in a way that allows me to get a chance to meet them. I've always wanted to talk to them. I have to tell you, I have so many virtual meetings for coffee that it's incredible. There are so many people that want the opportunity to talk, to discuss, to face some challenges that we are seeing. So I said, hey, would you like to meet for virtual coffee? If there's an organization that is in similar work, I'd like to see what type of work that they're doing that's very similar to the work that I'm doing. Where we're faced is people see people as competitors. People see people as, oh, you know, they serve the same population. Guess what? There's more than enough to go around, right? There's more than enough people who need our assistance. So working, collaborating, figuring out what are some ways that we can kind of do this together, asking those key questions, and also having those phone calls, having those virtual coffees, whatever that you think can move forward, having it not where it's just one-on-one, but maybe having teams being able to discuss that, right? Creating this environment of moving forward and tackling these issues that are before us. Okay, and then we have number 5. So number 5 is be nosy, all right? If somebody says something or if you want to find out what's going on, go ahead. Right? Ask the key questions. Ask us questions. Ask each other's questions. If you hear something about board or board development, go ahead and ask. Send a message to your board member. Be nosy to other organizations. I wonder what they're doing. I wonder what's going on. People often at times say, oh, we don't have to worry about it. It'll work itself out. Today, I'm here to tell you that it will not work itself out. Right? You have to be strategic. You have to be purposeful. I believe it's this sense of intentionality. Figuring out how can I be intentional, right? My favorite quote is leadership is intentional. You have to do something in order to move this forward, right? So figuring out ways that we can identify how can we talk to people, how can we get information, how can we move things in a way that moves things in a different directions. There's also this philosophy that people say when you walk into the room and you see the furniture, you are accepting that that's the way the furniture is. Furniture moves. You don't have to accept the way that furniture is, right? It's a leadership principle, figuring out not the way things are, but the way that things can be, right? Okay, so be nosy. And then the next one here is, which is a bonus point, is pay it forward. Right? If you see something, you hear something, you think it's going to help somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time, you think it's that somebody's going to help you move forward in a direction that you have to figure out, like what are the next opportunities for us. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop for a second and let people know that if there are questions or anything specifically, that make sure you put them in the chat, and then if we have the opportunity, maybe we can answer a couple of questions for you. I like people who are mentioning, and we see that Liza talks about the 3 C's, right? Conspire, collaborate, and co-create, right? Looking at opportunities for to do this work together. And when we talk about paying it forward, I say that figuring out what are some ways to make sure who else can learn and or benefit from this work. That's the first thing. Also, who else can learn or benefit from hearing it? But then also, what space am I in that I could benefit and help others, right? What do we have that somebody else could utilize or somebody else can understand to make them stronger? At the University of San Diego Nonprofit Institute, what we've been doing is we've created this Facebook group where it allows people to collaborate and figure out ways that they can work together, particularly during these times. All right, figuring out ways that what is it that they have more of, what are their needs, and as you start thinking about what those needs are and start writing those needs down, then we can figure out how are we going to move forward to the next steps. Well, good. Okay, I see another question in regards to board development. Right? Talking about boards. Hey, what about our board of directors? What is it that we think our board of directors need? Well, when I talk about learning at your own place, we also talked about this on-demand system that we have. We've been working on this series with Fortify, right? It's a series during this period of time that allows us to, we talked about several different types of opportunities that people are going through, and we've done webinars on them. In next week, we have a webinar on different type of leadership principles. That's going to be next Tuesday and Friday. It's on our website. You can take a look at that one also. And then we also have a number of things on boards. We have another things on coaching. So there's a number of different webinars that you can have, and they're accessible right now. Right? You click on the links on the sides and you'll be able to access them. We'll have somebody explain that to you shortly as we in this period of time. All right, so moving forward. So let's talk about boards. You know, I'm with BoardSource and I think they're an incredible organization. And for those of you who know us from the governance symposium that we hold every January, you know, we live and breathe governance. We also live and breathe good data, making sure that the right data, the most accurate data is coming to you. But from a governance perspective, what can our board do? Well, a lot of times some of the executive directors are saying, well, you know, my board has been out. We don't know what to do. And some of the boards are saying we don't know what to do. So the first thing I believe that people should really do is about this over communication. What are some ways that we can over communicate, right? Thinking about ways that are there opportunities for people to know what's going on. I ask people all the time, so tell me how things are going. And they say, well, I think this, I think that. And I ask, how do you know? Right? So figuring out how do we communicate? How can you expect someone to know what's going on if you haven't had the opportunity to share with them, right? Have the opportunity to ask the questions with them, have the opportunity to engage with them. So figuring out what are some ways to ask your ED, ask your fellow board members, what is going on, what are their specific needs, and how I can help. Another way that boards could work is making sure that they're enforcing this culture of inquiry where people feel in the organization that they're able to talk and understand, but also someone said to me when I was doing a coaching opportunity with them, I said, well, tell me about a little bit about your staff and how you've been communicating with them. And they said, well, from a staff perspective, I've been communicating with them, but they all know what's going on. You know, this is the opportunity that we have to over communicate. Yes, we all know what's going on. Yes, we all can watch the news, but I think it's important and essential for us to communicate with our staff, communicate with our team in a way that there's this level of clarity that they have in order to move an organization forward also. Good. So impressed by and appreciative of USD making this event virtual and interactive. We thank you for that. This is such a breath of fresh air mindset set shift. Does anyone have a good recommendation for organizational strength finder? Yeah, so Courtney asked us that. That's a great question, Courtney. You know, there's a lot of assessment tools out there, and I think that you have to look at it from this perspective. Well, first of all, there's a CCAT that's put on by this group in New York. It's called Core Capacity Assessment Tool. It allows you, that's just one. But all of these things you have to realize aren't giving you just the answer so you can move forward. They're a starting point. Any assessment tool, individual or organizational, it's just like a photo. It's a snapshot in time. So you have to figure out what is going to be the best ones for us. BoardSource does them also. There's some online also. McKinsey & Company did a couple of short ones specifically for organizations and boards called a short form and a long form. Boards of directors should be annually evaluating organizations, all right, looking at different ways. There's a Center for Creative Leadership does several different types of assessments also. So I can't say, oh, this one is better than that one. The thing is that figuring out what are my needs, what do I want to get out of this, where do I want us to end up at, and then responding by saying, okay, what assessment's going to be best for us. Are these webinars that he just mentioned available on YouTube too? Well, they're available immediately on our website, University of San Diego Nonprofit Institute, and they're also available on the YouTube platform that we have available today. So they are available immediately, and if you just give us a little bit more time, when I finish, we're gonna go ahead and walk you through each of those to put you in a better format. Perfect. Those are good questions also. Support for executive directors was something that came up earlier. So at the Nonprofit Institute and other programs, we focused and talked about coaching. And we have a bunch of certified coaches around the country, particularly in San Diego, who says that we're going to be available and lend ourselves to nonprofit leaders who need coaching, right? I believe that coaching is a way that people can ask and talk to somebody to get it off your chest, right? I believe that executive director role and sometimes a manager role, they're often the loneliest positions in organizations. Sometimes you can't gripe up, you can't gripe down, you can't gripe sideways, so you're figuring out what are some ways that we can do this. So I believe that if we're not looking at figuring out what are some ways that we can fulfill what our obligations are, but we can also talk to people in a way that helps, is going to be an incredible way to look at that. Lynn, thank you for your thoughtful ideas. Well, thank you. And this is from Andrew on engagement and collaboration from the Arts District Liberty Station here. He looks forward to collaborating in the future. You know, what we tried to do, and for those of you who saw our introduction video, we realized that nonprofit organizations come in all shapes, sizes, and forms from different areas, from arts and culture, from an economic development standpoint, from youth serving. We also realize that some of our libraries and learning institutions also that people may not think of, also the time that has needs, that there are specific needs for them, and there are opportunities for us to carry that forward also. So a lot of questions in regards to that and opportunities for collaboration. So some people say, how can we collaborate? What are some opportunities for us? One, I told you that it's really about you taking things forward yourself. Right? What is it that I can do in order to move forward organizations? And that's one way that you can look at it, is figuring out, okay, what is my space here? The second thing is, I think that you should collaborate with organizations that have core values that are similar to yours, right? I can spend the rest of a day talking about core values. That's how important they are, right? So I believe that organizations and relationships flourish when they understand core values. They identify their own, and they can identify others, and how can we move forward in that? So looking at our core values, identifying what those core values are, and identifying like-sized organizations because they're similar. I've worked in communities around the country, people who haven't taught together for 15 years, 20 years, haven't really been speaking. And then they realize that their core values are similar. They realize there's some things that they have in common, and it's moved things forward. So that's one way also. Any recommendations on the best way to begin conversations on how to pivot digitally for small nonprofits? You know, those are always going to be interesting, and it's something that's continually evolving, right? I can't say that specifically. We do have some work that we've done on with social media. We have some organizations that are incredible in that work. I know several organizations that do this with youth and allow youth to be there for it. But also the best thing is to allow people who know your organization to be those that move forward in it. It's really not the right answer for you. I do believe that it's something that's continually evolving. When I talk to some boards, they always say, oh, we definitely want a millennial here because we want them to do our social media, right? And they have all these other gifts and talents, but yet we're pigeonholing them. Well, I do believe that you want people who are passionate. It should be age independent also, allowing people, there are different people. My mother, for example, she's very, very savvy, and she's someone who I can follow and talk some information more. She's reposting stuff also. So these are just incredible opportunities, but it's where can we begin? I think there are opportunities to, again, look back at assessment tools that are going to be helpful for it. Right now, I saw a webinar that was sent to me earlier today by another organization back east where they're having some of these webinars on that and putting some key people in place. The other things that I've always told people to do is establish a collaboration. Ask 5, 6, 7, 8 people who are working in the nonprofit industry, outside of the nonprofit industry. They're ad hoc committee, they're a formal committee, they're an advisory group. They're people who know this stuff and are passionate about sometimes your organization or passionate about social media. Bring them together. Phone calls, video calls, whatever you can do to actually pull that insight to them. And a lot of times they enjoy it. They enjoy, hey, let's meet, let's talk about it, let's give some ideas. And the best part about it is there's two things. One is that they're often at times willing to carry the ball on that or willing to train and help organize that. But the second part of it, you're looking at future board members there. Future advisory board members, people who are working around, doing this work on purpose, for a purpose, and then we can move forward there. So I think that is a great question, Rosa, and I truly appreciate you kind of asking us that. All right, so there's one more question that goes back to leadership and so leadership principles. I will say this. So I'm a PhD candidate. I'm just a short time away from here from finishing up my PhD program at the University of San Diego, and it's focused on leadership, organizational and nonprofit leadership specifically. And I will say this, you don't know what you don't know. I have found being at the university, it has allowed me to see things so much differently. All right, looking at those opportunities to view things differently. And when I first came here, I thought I was very successful in my own right. And I would, let's say example, I was going around communities talking about these 3 powerful points around the country, working around that. And then I go to school and I look at some of this leadership stuff and I realize that there's a 4th point. And that 4th point tied together all of the 3 points. But how would I have known? So some of that is figuring out what are some opportunities for me to kind of move forward and allow opportunities for others, but also to allow for opportunities for myself to kind of like take this information in. So that's one of the ways also is that, again, there's certificate programs, there's webinars, there's being, reading of yourself and educating about different principles. But I have found it to be an incredible opportunity for myself and my own development. So we typically suggest that the tools you select should be derived after you develop your strategy. Yep. That's from Laura Deitrick here, who was here earlier. Thank you for comment. Now I know that she's at least listening to our programming. So she typically suggests that tools that we select should be derived after you develop your strategy, right? And I think we're saying it 2 different ways, but it's the same principle here is that you have some data, you have some research that you're going to look at. Sometimes people would say, we have to develop our strategy first and then we're going to look at tools. I think that in both instances, you have to have an approach, right? The term strategy sometimes throw people up. You have to have an approach to how we're going to attack this complex issue and move that kind of forward also. So Laura from USD, thank you for your comment. I think that we have just a couple of more, and I want to make sure that you are able to go on and kind of learn from all of the other great presenters that we have. While this one is being processed, I'll say this though, I haven't had the opportunity to thank City Finest Entertainment for their work in this platform. I also haven't had the opportunity to thank all of the presenters. Normally I have an opportunity to bounce around to different rooms and personally thank the presenters that have done this work, personally thank our staff and our team that have done this work also. So I am actually going to use this opportunity to say, thank you, and thank you for creating something that could be special and meaningful, and something that we allow that. They're telling me if you have comments, if you can keep them to the length of a tweet, that'd be fine, if you understand what that means, right? So to try and keep them short, because we're not going to be able to read all of them. So we're just going to take one more. So someone asked about something about like, what is your go-to, like, where do you get your information? What's your go-to place? And I would say there was not really one specific place, but there are some collaboratives that I find to be, important and essential. BoardSource, I mentioned which is really big on boards. If you go on there, boardsource.org, and you go on their website, there's a number of different free activities and also paid opportunities for you to look at some board assessment tools, look at some how to challenge boards, how to advocate. There is something on social media there also. They understand that advocacy, people often mix that up with doing things that nonprofits really shouldn't do. So what is it, that line between looking at legislative items, but also looking at it from an advocacy perspective as well. So I think that there's some opportunities there. There's this group called Minnesota Nonprofits, and this is a group that has Council of Nonprofits, and they have tons of information that's available and that's free. We also at the University of San Diego, we have some of those tools on the Nonprofit Institute's website. We also have information that from every student, many of our students who've written papers and who've studied this work, who've written also sample board reports, sample bylaws. We have all of that stuff in a library that is free to the public, that you can access information on there. Again, it's one person's perspective because it was that individual and or groups of individuals writing it, but we find it to be very key. Some of the data that we're also looking at is telling us, how do we move forward in this time? So one thing that we did as a team was we started looking at all of our research from 2008, the last recession. So we looked at that and said, hey, what did we learn from that? And we were able to pull that information together so that we can move forward. Someone says, can I bring you and keep you at my work every day? I wish I could, but I mentioned I'm working on a dissertation, so that's where 90% of my time goes. And then I have a little guy at home, his name is Lynn also. I love him 90% of the time, and he takes up the rest of my time. But it's a good question, Lauren. And but we do this work on a regular basis. We do host these conferences, we host these events, these dialogue, webinars. We do this information because that's what we believe that one of our strengths are. One of our strengths is that of a collaborator. How do we collaborate, be collaborative? How do we bring people together? People respect us. We continue to have them respect us with our good work and the good data we provide. So how do we bring these people together? And this is one of the ways that we bring people together as a convener. So we have a strategic plan where we're focused on that also, figuring out what are some opportunities for us to convene groups. So thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to spend this time with you. We'll have some exciting things that are going on later on also. I'm involved in a conversation on diversity at 1 o'clock, and we have a number of different things. As I mentioned before, use the on-demand, send the links to different people. Also, use this as opportunities for you to collaborate again. Don't forget, I keep saying that, but it's essentially important for all of us. And then also, if we can figure anything out that you have any questions, please make sure you put them in the chat window, all right? I often tell people at a time, this is the information that you're gathering from us, is not saying, oh, I learned this from Lynn, I learned this from the university. You're using your skills to access us. So you've done this work.